Hello and welcome to Chicago Reacts. My name is Lauren and today I'm doing something a little bit different, trying to branch out a little bit. I'm going to be looking at a Lord of the Rings video. I love Lord of the Rings. I have loved it for quite a long time. Um I've read the books a couple of times, but it's at this point it has been a while since I've read them. I really do enjoy the movies. I like trivia about the movies and, the books themselves. I enjoy the genre and I enjoy the story. So this video is about what happened to the orcs after the ring was destroyed and the war had ended. And I gotta say, my brain I never even considered really what might have happened to the orcs. I just was like, they all just fell down dead, because I feel like in the movie, like the wave or whatever, the tower gets destroyed and like that energy wave is released and they all just kind of collapsed. So I kind of just assumed that a lot of them were just dead. But I guess there's no reason to assume that. Like, a bunch of them probably still are out and about and marauding around, and they don't have like a significant leader anymore. But it's not like they're stupid, right? Like, they have their own, like, they're still very much capable of intelligence and like strategy. And yeah, sometimes they're maybe a little bit ruled by wanting to eat or something. But aren't we all? I'm just really very much remembering the meat's back on the menu, boys. Like when they just wanted to eat Merry and Pippin, and then like there was a whole fight about it ultimately. But like, yeah, there is no reason to assume that they just completely disintegrated right away, right? Like, they probably started killing each other just as much as they had killed other people. But I don't know. I've never really considered it. So I hope you're looking forward to it. I certainly am. Let us begin.
The Orcs, the brutal and terrible foot soldiers of the Dark Forces, have plagued Middle-earth for centuries, serving both Melkor and Sauron and driving the machine of war. But what happened to them after Sauron's downfall at the end of the War of the Ring? Did any Orcs continue the fight? Or did some, touched by a longing for redemption, seek a path of peace?
Oh, I doubt that,
Greetings, explorers of
but
Middle-earth.
that might
My
just be
Gavanin. On
bias.
today's episode, we will unveil the fate of the Orcs in Middle-earth. In order to do so, we must travel back to the very genesis of their existence as we unearth the secrets that set the stage for the epic tale that follows.
Okay.
Eru Ilúvatar, the supreme being in Tolkien's Legendarium, first brought the elves into being in Middle-earth. In that hour, the children of the earth awoke, the firstborn of Ilúvatar. By the starlit mere of Cuiviénen, water of awakening, they rose from the sleep of Ilúvatar. And while they dwelt yet silent by Cuiviénen, their eyes beheld first of all things the stars of heaven. Yet,
Okay.
in the shadows, the
Because
original
like
Dark Lord Melkor harbored a
yeah,
yearning.
Melkor. Like the orcs were created because they were elves once who were just tortured and until their minds twisted, right?
To craft progeny akin to Eru's children. Alas, the flame imperishable, the essence of divine vitality, resided solely within Eru's grasp. And so, in lieu of the ability to create, Melkor devised an alternate solution, to corrupt. Before long, any elf venturing too far from the region of their awakening found themselves ensnared by the minions of Melkor, and spirited away to the stronghold of Utumno. Here, within the clutches of Melkor, the elves underwent a harrowing transformation, their very essence twisted and bent to the will of the Dark Lord. An almost unrecognizable being emerged, a perversion of what was once fair and noble. Thus, the first Orcs were born. This genesis
Yes.
has instilled a belief among many that Orcs, being distorted versions of elves, might share both the destiny and enduring lifespans of their elven kin.
Right, I was actually just wondering about that. It's because like if they were elves once, why shouldn't they be like just as immortal, And like they can still fall to a blade or whatever, but like some orcs might also be thousands of years old. It's less likely, I think, because orcs they're a more warlike subset, right? So it's like because they are more likely to fight each other even, it's less likely to live that long, but it is possible.
Yet, within Tolkien's overarching narrative, a recurring theme unfolds. That evil possesses the power only to corrupt, never to create.
Okay.
Melkor's twisted manifestations consistently pale in comparison to their original counterparts. Orcs
That's
stand
gotta
as no exception.
that's gotta hurt him.
Contrary to the assumption of shared longevity, they are in fact diminished and bear notably shortened lifespans. They could be slain, and they were subject to disease. But apart from these ills, they died and were
Hmm.
not immortal,
Okay.
even according to the manner of the Quendi. Indeed, they appear to have been by nature short-lived compared with the span of men of higher race, such as the Edain.
Okay. So it also could be that like whatever magic or whatever force is keeping them alive, the light of Elendil or whatever, like so much of that had to go into keeping them alive through all of the torture that it cut their actual lifespan short. Because we know that the light can be diminished or like changed over, things can happen to it. So it's like that could be like, it's like, well, it has to keep them alive. Like if a human went through the tortures that it takes to become an elf, they would not survive it. They would die. Like really, really, I mean, to become an orc, they would definitely not live. They wouldn't become an orc. They would just be dead. So I think maybe this is me just spur of the moment theorizing here. Orcs have a shorter lifespan because that light that was inside them originally that has been corrupted had to work overtime to make them not die, to keep them surviving through the process. So now they don't live as long.
Now that we understand the making and the nature of the orc, we must let the winds of war carry us as we shift our gaze to the forces and factions at play during the War of the Ring. Within the walls of Dol Guldur dwelled a formidable host of orcs. As we step into the haunting corridors of this great fortress, let us heed Haldir's description. In the midst upon a stony height stands Dol Guldur, where long the hidden enemy had his dwelling. We fear that now it is inhabited again, and with power sevenfold. The orcs from Dol Guldur were a great menace to the elven realms of Lothlorien and Mirkwood. Thrice the forces of Dol Guldur attacked Lothlorien, and thrice they were thrown back.
Okay,
In tandem with their
good.
assaults on Lothlorien, the relentless orcs also launched an attack on Mirkwood. The clash between the orcs and Thranduil's forces unfolded in the heart of Mirkwood, and in a resolute stand, the elven defenders emerged victorious. Amidst the echoes of these battles, countless orcs fell to the fierce resistance they encountered.
I feel like Matt Smith could easily play any of these. It just kind of looks like they took Matt Smith, maybe in his Targaryen days or whatever. He was in that show, right? I'm just like looking. I was like, they don't have eyebrows, just like high cheekbones, like rather strong jaws. It is kind of interesting to see some of these art forms because I've been watching some of the Shadow of War video games as well, by Tear of Grace, and like the orcs in that game are all so different. And that was also in the original Lord of the Rings trilogy. Like the orcs all had very, very distinctive looks. Each and every one of them was different, which is such a cool, which I really, really appreciated about both that game and that series. And it's one of the things that I hated about the Hobbit trilogy. One of the things. If you want to hear my rant about the Hobbit trilogy, I will make a video that is just a rant about the freaking Hobbit movies. But the point being, it is like I get the point of these like this art and this art style, but it's just like everyone does look very samey. Like all the elves look the same, all the orcs look the same. You know, it's less interesting.
In the aftermath, Celeborn, undeterred, spearheaded an offensive force against the remnants of these orcs. Celeborn came forth and led the host of Lorien over Anduin in many boats. They took Dol Guldur, and Galadriel threw down its walls and laid
Good for
bare its
her.
pits, and the forest was cleansed. Saruman, the White Wizard, commanded a formidable host of orcs and Uruk-hai. Yet, in the decisive battles at Helm's Deep and Isengard, the forces of Saruman were inflicted with two comprehensive defeats. The Ents, guardians of the ancient forests,
Oh, that's an
and the
interesting look
valiant
event.
Rohirrim
I
left
like
no
that.
orcs standing. In the Battle of Dale, Easterlings and Orcs collided with the combined might of Erebor and Dale. Although the price was high, with the lives of King Brand and King Dane the Second Ironfoot lost, the forces of darkness were ultimately vanquished. In the depths of Moria, a force of Orcs lingered in the wake of the destruction of Durin's Bane. Tolkien offered scant details on the destiny of these Orcs. Yet, while seeking morsels of lore that may unveil the fate of the Orcs dwelling in its subterranean depths, a glimmer of insight emerged to me from the pages of The Peoples of Middle-earth, shedding a faint light on the mysterious conclusion of their
Ooh.
tale. And the line of Dane prospered, and the wealth and renown of the kingship was renewed, until there arose again for the last time an heir of that house that bore the name of Durin, and he returned to Moria, and there was light again in deep places, and the ringing of hammers and the harping of harps, until the world
Harping.
grew old, and the dwarves failed, and the days of Durin's race were ended.
The harping of
In the
harps.
heart of Mordor, a formidable host of orcs still dwelled, as Aragorn led his forces to the Black Gate, and the ring was cast into the fiery abyss of Mount Doom. Tolkien's words unveiled the fate of the orcs of Mordor. So the creatures of Sauron, orc or troll or beast spell-enslaved, ran hither and thither mindless, and some slew themselves, or cast themselves in pits, or fled wailing
Okay.
back to hide in holes and dark, lightless places far from hope.
So now I'm kind of getting like Cyberman vibes, right? Like, because they were tortured and twisted until they became these creatures. And then like so Cybermen in Doctor Who, spoilers, used to be humans, but then they were like their brains were taken out and put into these like cyber suits, and now they are all then they're Cybermen now. They don't remember their humanity, but when there's certain things that happen like that they can remember what they used to be, and they lose their minds. You know, like every so often you find someone who's got enough presence of self, I guess, to keep a hold of their faculties for a little bit longer, enough to like enough time to save the doctor or whatever, but like when they realize what they have become, they do lose their minds about it. Like they cannot handle it. So that it might be kind of what happened to some of the people who were under the thrall of Sauron and under the thrall of the ring. Like once the elves they remembered what they used to be, they looked at what they are now and they just like couldn't handle it. Okay. I
In
didn't
the
remember that.
aftermath of Sauron,
I kind of remembered them fleeing. Like that was kind of in my book memory was they just disappeared and they fled. Um the forces all broke up, but in the movie it just looked like they all just kind of collapsed.
downfall, some orcs, gripped by despair, or perhaps losing their sanity, chose a grim fate. Slaughtering themselves or plunging into pits, seeking escape from a world suddenly bereft of Sauron's dominion. Yet, a resilient faction among the orcs opted for a different path. Fleeing into the obscurity of dark recesses, these survivors sought refuge in hidden corners of Middle-earth.
Okay.
After all, the orcs had weathered the storms of downfall before. With the previous defeats of Morgoth and Sauron, they were capable of acting on their own, doing evil deeds unbidden for their own sport. Moreover, the orcs continued to live and breed and to
I don't
carry
want
on
to
their
think about the
business
orcs
of
breeding.
ravaging and plundering after Morgoth was overthrown. So the
Cuz like I
people
don't think in any of the books we saw a female orc, or at least there was no way to tell if there were any, which is just like something I hadn't really thought about before. And now I'm like, but now they're talking about their breeding, and it's like the Orakai can be made. The orcs can breed?
ability lingers that surviving orcs, potentially seeking refuge in the Misty Mountains, for example, might have endeavored to endure and perpetuate their race in the aftermath of Sauron's downfall. Freed from the oppressive fear that had bound them to their dark master, a question arises. Could any among them harbor a desire for repentance? Was there any goodness within their tormented souls? A compelling and revealing glimpse into the psyche of the orcs emerges from one of my favorite pieces of dialogue in The Lord of the Rings.
Because that could be interesting. Because it is a question of, like, in The Lord of the Rings, it does feel like there's an overart like, there are some people who just have no goodness in them. I don't think that is true to life. I think in real life, there's at least the possibility of goodness in everybody. I think everybody does have the capability of changing if they have done something terrible or if they are a terrible person. I think there is that possibility that they could change, you know? I think that we have to allow people that grace to change their minds, to grow. I do think that a lot of the people who are truly terrible, who do terrible, terrible things, I mean, they have made their choices also, and, like, you can't just keep giving them chance after chance after chance if they keep letting you down over and over and over again, because at some point, a lot I feel like they are like, "Well, I've made my bed, this is how I am, this is what I'm going to do," you know, and it's unlikely that they will change, but I think everyone's got the possibility, you know? Pride will stop them, most people from actually doing it, but I think if, you know, I think in the real world, everyone's got that option. In Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, I don't know. Like, could Sauron have changed? You know, like, could he have become a good guy? Like, no, I don't think so. Not in Tolkien's world. Not in this world either, but I think, you know, the possibility would be more likely in this world.
This rare insight invites us to ponder the complexities of their nature. I'd like to try somewhere where there's none of them, but the war's on now, and when that's over, things may be easier. It's going well, they say. They would, grunted Gorbag. We'll see. But anyway, if it does go well, there should be a lot more room. What do you say? If we get a chance, you and me'll slip off and set up somewhere on our own with a few trusty lads. Somewhere where there's good loot, nice and handy, and no big bosses. Ah, said Shagrat, like old times.
Hmm,
This humanizing section of dialogue provides a poignant
interesting.
glimpse into the orcs' yearning for freedom from the perpetual state of war,
And the
and
fact
a
that they do have
desire to settle
friends.
in a realm beyond Sauron's dominion. Is this a genuine desire for a departure from their malevolent ways, or is it
Hmm,
rooted primarily
they
in
still want to raid.
self-preservation?
They still want loot.
Could orcs harbour the capacity for goodness? Tolkien touches upon this very subject in letter 153 when
Oh,
discussing
God.
orcs. They
No
would be
wonder I would never have
Morgoth's
known
greatest
this.
sins, abuses of his highest privilege, and would be creatures begotten of sin, and naturally bad. I nearly wrote irredeemably bad, but that would be going too far, because by accepting or tolerating their making, necessary to their actual existence, even orcs would become part of the world, which is
Hmm,
God's and ultimately good.
hmm.
This passage suggests
Interesting
that the
thought.
notion of orcs finding redemption is not entirely implausible within Tolkien's theoretical framework. While the possibility
Okay,
of
that's
orcs
me told.
repenting exists in theory, it appears to be more a subject of theological speculation than a pragmatic assertion. He also states that orcs are naturally bad, which leads me to believe that the most likely outcome is that any orcs remaining alive after the War of the Ring would live out their days with hatred and resentment in their hearts until the very end. After all, there were large portions of the history of Middle-earth where no large-scale war was being fought. During these times, it would be possible for some of the more intelligent and less cruel orcs to potentially trade or coexist with men, but there is no evidence for this in any of Tolkien's writings. A further indicator of the fate awaiting orcs in Middle-earth lies in Tolkien's contemplation of a sequel to The Lord of the Rings, titled The New Shadow. Notably absent from the outline narrative of this prospective sequel are orcs, replaced instead by men who serve as the primary antagonists. This omission provides a compelling clue to Tolkien's intentions, a suggestion that he did not envision a lasting existence for the race
Hmm.
of orcs. In conclusion, the fate of the orcs is much aligned with the downfall of their lord Sauron. Without any figurehead to rally around, the surviving orcs of Middle-earth likely formed small tribes in caves in the mountains. Their hatred and ill will towards men would never fade. These hostile tribes would not long last as the age of men was now at hand.
Yeah,
Any orc
I can see that.
settlements would not go
They would have,
unnoticed, as the realm
and they would like fight with each other too, probably, as well as, you know, attempting that. Even the two that had that conversation were talking about finding a place where, you know, the loot would be good, which means it's like, you know what that means though. They're going to be raiding farmers and like peasants and villages and stuff. Uh, like just you and me and a couple of lads. Like, you know, it is humanizing, but it is also like they were still talking about, you know, it'll be a much more, we won't be at war, but we will be still doing terrible things.
of men thrived and expanded. They would have been hunted to the very extinction of their race, until the scourge of orc kind was wiped from the face of the earth and banished to the pages of history. In arriving upon this conclusion, I find myself wondering if this is a ruthless genocide, or an inescapable destiny required in order to
Hmm.
remove as much of the influence of Morgoth as possible from Arda Mard. Pondering the concepts of pity and mercy towards those seemingly irredeemable, akin to Gandalf's teachings to Frodo regarding Gollum, invites us to examine the passing of judgment upon those we may personally deem to be worthy of death.
Yeah.
As our journey through the enchanted realms of
That's where it
Middle-earth
gets
comes to a
tricky.
close,
Like,
I
why
would
should
like
I
to
get to
take this
choose?
opportunity to light the beacons and call for aid. So, if you have enjoyed today's video, please remember that every like, share, and subscribe is a beacon of support that helps me continue to put more time into making more videos like this one. Don't forget to join the discussion by sharing your thoughts and theories in the comments below. I always enjoy hearing your insights and perspectives. Thank you for tuning in to Realms Unravelled. Farewell, fellow travelers.
Okay. I thought that was cool. Um, and again, this is Realms Unraveled. I'm gonna give that guy a like. I would be curious. I kind of want to watch like a whole bunch of those. There's a whole lot of these videos that look really interesting. So I hope this video does well. If you're watching the Shadow of War videos, go ahead and look at these too, maybe. Like, that could be interesting. I would be fascinated to think more about that. And like I said in the video itself, I think that there remains within every, if as long as you're alive, there's the possibility of change, right? You can change for the better, you can change for the worse, the people around you can change for the better or change for the worse. That doesn't mean like you have to like give someone enough like chances to hurt you over and over again, but like if someone does make the effort to change, I feel like the best thing to do is grant them at least understanding that they're making the effort to change. And there are things that you will not be able to forgive people for. There are things that you're not going to be able to forgive people for. And that's okay too. Not saying it's not. But again, I just don't believe that there's anyone in this world who's born truly evil, you know? I've never really held with that. Like, I just don't. I don't think that there is. I think that people are very much capable of doing completely, truly evil things. And people can be evil. And really, you know, they can do awful things. They can make other people do awful things. But no, I don't think anyone was born that way. No one was born destined to be evil. They made choices to become that way. But if they made choices to become that way, they can also make choices to change and to try and make amends and to try to redeem themselves. And I say try because it's not always going to be possible. But I wasn't expecting to like start thinking about things really so philosophically, thinking about the orcs. Good Lord. Okay, well, that was a lot. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you want to discuss philosophy, go ahead and let me know in the comments below. We can talk more about it. And again, if you want to see me rant about the Hobbit movies for a while, go ahead and let me know about that too. I'll see what I can do. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.